Hello, everybody. It's me, Fee, White Zulu, and I want to welcome you to another chapter of, another chapter of Okavango Diary. And I hope you're enjoying these readings. I want to welcome you all. And if you are enjoying them, please share or press the like button or whatever people do if they want to. I'm sorry, I'm a bit Diomaka today. I haven't got any words in front of me to read, so I'm doing this off the cuff. However, this is a greeting to you all and a welcome, and I hope that you enjoy these chapters that I'm reading out. They go out twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays, if all goes well. And enjoy them, and thank you so much for listening to them. Share them around. Thank you, and goodbye. The boat returned half an hour later with the permanent manager and his wife and a couple of Botswana staff who had taken leave and were coming back for the month. She barely glanced at me before she stamped off to Moxa with her bags, while her husband greeted me quite cordially. I was now the hostess, and had taken that half hour as a brief opportunity to move my own bag of belongings into what had been Kira's hut. This was a very pleasant thatched rondavel on the outer edge of the camp, and had a bathtub, something I had missed very much for the past 2 months. I far prefer baths to showers. I then went to the office to see who was checking in later on. The BFH was rummaging suspiciously through her desk and turning on me said belligerently, "Have you been using this desk?" I told her that I had, as I assumed it was there for the manageress. "Well, you shouldn't have. I've got personal things in there which I don't want people going through." When I'd opened the drawers on arrival, all I'd found were a stapler, an eraser, a ruler, and some paper clips in the bottom drawer. I had found a paper for the printer, and that was all. This was an inauspicious start. I went off to the bar to do a stock take, and then into the locked room which contained all the beers and bottles of wine and liquor, and then carrying crates of these, I staggered back to the bar to restock the fridges. It was hard physical work, and difficult to do when suffering from ME, something else I hadn't bargained for. As I was in mid-count, a boat arrived carrying the first guests booking in for that day. I had to drop everything and go down to greet them, introduce myself, and show them to their rooms. Also to do the orientation talk. I went back to counting, only to find the manager standing there with his hands on his hips looking furious. "You are never, and I repeat never, to leave liquor lying around unattended." He was quite right. I had abandoned several cases of beer on the bar while I hurried off down to greet the guests. I promised I wouldn't do it again, and I was on a learning curve. He just stalked away. I could hear shouting in the kitchen from the BFH and wondered how things were going there. I was beginning to wish that I was still doing that job, insufficient cooks or not, rather than this one, which I was not enjoying at all. Another boatload of guests arrived, and I had to drop what I was doing again and go through the same procedure. Now there were people in the gift shop wanting service, and I still needed to get beers and wine into the fridge to chill for pre-lunch drinks, as well as lunch itself. I asked the guests to hang on a minute, rammed the beers into the fridge, grabbed a few bottles of white wine and stuffed them in as well, and then came back to the gift shop. The first thing the guests had to do was sign an indemnity form and fill in a form stating where they were from, their passport numbers, and a whole lot of other information required by the Botswana government of their visitors. The indemnity form had given Kira problems, and I had once found her crying an afternoon in a corner of the office. One of the guests, a Texan lawyer, had refused to fill in the indemnity form unless she took out certain clauses. He grabbed the pen out of her hand and started crossing out great chunks of it. I radioed Maun head office to ask permission for him to do so, and had been told on no account would that be allowed. If he refused to fill in the form as it stood, then he would not be allowed on any excursions. In fact, he would not be allowed to set his foot off the island, nor leave the perimeter of the camp. She had to go back and relay this information to him, and he began shouting at her. Poor Kira. I hugged her, trying to comfort her as much as possible, and we made a pact together that we would push him off the jetty that evening when he was getting out of the boat after an excursion, and feed him to Fat Albert, the huge croc which liked to lurk around the boats when they came into the jetty. Now it was my job to diplomatically coerce everybody into signing these forms and asking them to fill in the questionnaire, neither of which they were keen to do. Then came the purchasing in the gift shop. I had no idea of the price of anything, nor how the sizes worked, as the Americans have a different sizing system to the British, who have a different sizing system to the South Africans and Australians. It was a minefield for me, who cannot do simple arithmetic. I also struggled with the credit cards, trying to ram them through the old machine, which preferred to seize the 3 flimsy paper and duplicates and rip them to pieces, or crumple and jam the machine completely. So I'd have to pull all the scrunched up pieces of paper out and ask the guests to sign a new slip again. Obviously there was a knack to this, but it took me 3 or 4 tries with each card, which was embarrassing, as the queue of people wanting to check out their purposes and get to the bar built up. Somehow, I was supposed to be at the bar at this time as well, serving drinks to the thirsty people who had just endured that same grueling flight from Johannesburg to Maun, as I had, and then changed into these tiny planes, the size of a gnat, as one guest described them. Most of them had never been on an aircraft that small before, and were still shaken by the experience. So the very first thing they wanted once they stepped on shore at Kugana was a stiff drink. By the time I'd shooed the last guest out of the shop and locked it, there was a bunch of people milling around the bar, and the manager, red-faced, was trying to deal with the situation. Where the hell have you been? You should have been here at least an hour ago, polishing and chilling the glasses, and getting lemons sliced, and everything ready. You knew there was going to be a rush to the bar once the boats arrived. I muttered some excuse about the shop, but he was having none of it. Normally I'm quite a perfectionist and like to be well organized, But I knew that this was a total shambles and I was not coping. I was also beginning to develop a migraine headache and palpitations from the stress, and knew that I wouldn't have time to go and lie down to sleep it off. When Fred and Kira and I had been a team, we'd covered for each other when the going got tough. But there would be no help from this couple, I could see that. Nor could I blame them, as I should have been a lot better prepared. While people were at the bar drinking, I was to go around with a wine list asking the guests to choose what type of wine they would like with their dinner, citing what was on the menu. Some of them wanted wine with their lunch as well, so I had to scurry around and find those bottles already chilled. I had overlooked the fact that rosé needs chilling as well, and hadn't put any in the fridge, which was unfortunate, as several people wanted it with their lunch. During lunch I scurried around, pouring wine for those who wanted it, and fetching drinks for those who wanted other choices. My head was thumping by now, and I could barely see from the pain. The leftover wine after lunch was to be labelled with the guests' names, recorked and presented again at dinner time, well chilled. I tried to write their names on the labels with a ballpoint, but the bottles were wet from condensation, as were the labels, and the pen didn't work. Kira must have had some sort of system whereby she wrote the labels and then stuck them on the bottles. I would have to devise something. By now I was in such a muddle that I didn't know who had which wine. After lunch, in spite of my headache and longing to go and lie down for 2 hours, as everybody else did, I had to spend time restocking the fridge properly this time, putting in both white and rosé wines. Just as I thought I'd got on top of that job, I realized it was getting dark, and I had to go and greet the guests coming in from their boat excursions. This involved grabbing an armful of 8 torches, checking that they worked before handing them to each guest as they stepped off the boats. To my dismay, I could only find 5 torches under the counter in the gift shop, and only 3 of them worked, and I couldn't find any batteries. There simply hadn't been nearly enough time for Kira to teach me my job. I would have needed to shadow her for at least 24 hours to get the gist of what it entailed. This was neither her nor my fault, but simply that we had both been far too busy to do anything but verbally run through the salient bits. I was so deeply regretting my decision to be a hostess. I hated this job, didn't like the manager or his wife, and felt very lonely in it, as I didn't even have the African staff to turn to. I also missed having Fred around, as he got both jobs in this capacity as relief, as he had done both jobs in his capacity as relief manager, and had always been very generous when it came to helping me out and giving advice. Our little team of 3, and that included Mark at Sarrow, had been a well-oiled and happy machine, always finding a little time to kick back in the office for a chat, or sit at the bar when the guests were getting bathed and dressed for dinner, for an ice-cold drink and a catch-up. This was nothing but a frantic, breathless, and unrewarding rush. I took my own precious mag-light torch to lend out until I could find batteries for the other ones, and scrambled down just as the first boat came in. Hello everybody. Thank you so much for listening to my videos and my stories of my life. And I want to thank John Muslane for being what I call the sound engineer, but I'm sure there's a more professional word for it. However, faithful, and for 4 years now, I think, he has been here for me every Wednesday. Well, I think it's Wednesdays, but once a week to record 2 chapters of whichever book it is I'm reading. And without him, this couldn't be done. So a big thank you to John. Also, Sean van Vuren, we send the videos to him. Sorry, I'm not reading this, I'm just doing it off the cuff. And my brain is a bit tumor. And Sean uploads them to the YouTube channel where you can find them all in playlists. He does it beautifully. And I want to thank them both for all the help that they give me. Well, it's not help, they do everything for me. And it's a great asset. So also, I have a website called whitezulubook.com, obviously www in front of it, but you'll find it there. Quite easy to find. Johnny Clegg's called The White Zulu. Mine's called White Zulu. And you will find on my website, you'll find all kinds of photographs going way back to when my ancestors settled in the Cape, 1652. Well, not photographs of them, but descriptions. This photograph of my grandmother's wedding, and lovely, lovely photos of the farm we still own. My sister sent me a photograph this morning of the farm in midsummer, and she says how beautiful it's looking. I've had a lot of rain. So, just want to thank my helpers, John and Sean, to thank you all for listening, and also please share this with everybody else. Hit the like button and enjoy. Goodbye.